Are you a literature lover? Are you tired of reading literature that does not resonate with your time? Do you have questions about literature? If so, welcome to the podcast My 2 Cents Worth, the platform that discusses literature in relation to our times. I am uniquely Kenyan and relevantly African, hence my focus, African literature. In this video, I'll be discussing the title, A Descry. The Undaring African literature. Please listen till the end. You will definitely have food for thought. Let us start in. A Descry of the Undaring African literature is an echo of the perspective of Professor Simon Gikandi's interview on the genealogies of African literature, interviewed by Tinashe Mushakavanku, as posted by the Brittle Paper website on September 2020. The interview had a mind-boggling question. Can we speculate the futures of African literature? For brevity's sake, the key highlight as a takeaway point into the Descry of Undaring is simply put in Gikandi's words. Open quote. One way of thinking about it is to think about Africa as a floating signifier that means different things to different people at different times and in different places. End quote. This is to say, African literature is fluid in nature, and as it flows from time periods to generations and geography landscapes, it does mold itself to suit the specificities. And surely indeed, this is a perfect way to describe the Undaring African literature in our today's society. To put it bluntly, it is the new-found space that keeps widening from the new societal issues to the uncovering candid styles of presenting literature, of course, by the ever-emerging writers and scholars of African literature, all the way to the reception of it by the lovers of literature. In this regard, let me now allow us to get a glimpse of this Undaring African literature that is becoming vividly evident each new day. One key example are the platforms that I have mentioned in the previous episode. Number 1, Brittle Paper. It is an African literary blog which has dared to focus mostly on the new voices and works of upcoming, vibrant young African writers whose contents are refreshing thoughts and insights which pose challenging questions that need to be answered in order to get our footing as a society in all the facets of life under the context of the globally driven environment. Number 2, Writers Space Africa, a literary magazine platform that has also dared in creating a room for all the African writers to demystify their uniqueness with a sole aim, which I quote, celebrating an awakening of this generation's unabashed zeal to tell our stories of what it is to be African. End quote. The third one, Jalada. It is a Pan-African writers collective whose prime purpose is to have, quote-unquote, freedom to write without doubts. This daring step brought along a series of interesting inventions such as Jalada Mobile Literary Festival, Jalada Book Caravan, and many more. To say the least, it is a platform that calls itself a bank for African literariness. The 3 platforms are just but a few of the many daring moves that African literature has grown into. Second key example, which is vividly evident as well, is the expansion of African literary creativity as showcased by the contemporary African authors who have dared to partake the undared. I must say, for factual grounds, my engagement on this is heavily borrowed from an article on titled The Next Generation Special Issue on Contemporary African Literature by Otosirinzie Obiang, posted on Open Country Mag website on April 8, 2022. And this is the starter phrase. I quote, most of us were living in the continent, younger millennials, all of us politically tired, many of us economically deprived, every one of us culturally thirsty. We were tired of being tired, which meant we were tired of being afraid, of not aiming for tall dreams. End quote. Well put. This is now the asserting spirit in African literature that has become more prominent and aspirational to its highest peak of literary discourses. The article highlights a number of authors alongside their daringness from across Africa. I will briefly name a few. Number 1. In the coast of Kenya, Khadija Abdallah questioned why she couldn't write a fairy tale of her city. She dared this and dared, hence laying grounds for her novel, The House of Rust. Number 2. In South Africa, Letogonolo Mokorane and Alma Nalisha Seli, hope I've pronounced them well, dared the undared and started their podcast, The Cheeky Natives, a literary podcast that primarily focuses on anything Black literature. Number 3. On Instagram, Toby Inade dared the undared and started Bookstagram account for what will become Roving Heights, Nigeria's biggest bookstore. And the fourth one, Romeo Origun a Nigerian poet and essayist, dared the undared to bring his voice in gay poetry, as shaped by his queer experience, has since led him to win a couple of awards and all the way to being featured in the New Yorker. Number 5. In Botswana, Gamagwe Joy Mogami dared the undared and started Africa in Dialogue, a literary website that is quoted to be a library of not only ideas but of feelings, guided by the understanding that, quote, Africa needs to have an archive of the current, end quote. Just recently, a prolific Kenyan writer, Iza Luhumio, dared the undared and became the 5th Kenyan to be awarded the Ako Kane Prize for African writing of a short story, 5 Years Next Sunday. A story that narrates the main character named Pili, who has the power to call the rains through her hair. The thought behind is from the Kenyan coastal belief of witchcraft. In conclusion, the above-mentioned authors are few of the many who have proven that the daring the undaring is the way to go. And yes, through this, we surely cannot speculate the futures of African literature, as it is becoming more dynamic and newer every day. That's all I have for you today. Kindly subscribe and share this podcast with your family and friends. Thank you and see you next time.